I've trained calisthenics for 10 years. I've solely focused on strength. But what's on the other side? What can we learn from endurance? This is my journey to running a 70-kilometer ultramarathon in Japan. Okie dokie, boys and girls, it is day 43 of Road to Shimanami, and today we have an upper body day. It's gonna be heavily focused on dip volume, but that's gonna be the later half of the day's training. First of all, some planche and some normal pull-ups, not front level pull-ups, normal pull-ups, but nothing fancy is needed in a workout, so I'm gonna stick to the basics. And well, I just mentioned that I would start with some planche, but when I say basics, I don't mean easy exercises, I don't mean volume, I mean the tried and true methods, the ones that have been going along for many years, right? The ones that people have been doing for many years and have proven that they work. So while the planche may not be an easy exercise, right, it's still undeniable the effects that it has on basically all other push skills, right? The pull-up and the dip and the push-up as well, right? When you do those basic exercises, they have carryover into so many other skills and aspects of your life or training, right? And basically, it's a bit of a waste not to do them, in my opinion. So, of course, the full planche is very difficult, but I'm not saying that you have to train the planche to get to the full planche. You can train the planche with a lean planche, you can train the planche with a tuck planche, and basically get a lot of the same benefits because you're training the same movement pattern. You're training this pattern where you're trying to push your body with your shoulder and your bicep is working as well. And I feel like that straight arm strength in the planche is just going to carry over into lots of different situations. And so oftentimes these basic exercises, right, it's the simple ones, they're not fancy, and right, they're not necessarily interesting, so you might want to avoid them. But when it comes down to it, they have been going along for many years, right? People have been using them for many years precisely because they're so effective. So I feel like they are the most worthwhile doing. So first of all, I'm gonna start off with 3 sets of planche, 3 sets of pull-ups, alternating styles. So 1 set of planche and then 1 set of pull-ups. But yeah, I am not fully recovered yet from last planche training, so these sets will not be the most crazy intensity. And for the pull-ups, I'm just gonna add 10 kilos of weight and see what happens. So let's go. Holy shit. I wasn't exaggerating when I said I wasn't fully recovered. This feels hellish. Alright, so for these pull-ups, I'm doing them for rehab, so I still have a bit of pain in my flank here. And the important part is not to pull to the max. 20 pull-ups, strength-wise, is quite easy, but when it comes to the pain in the flank, I want to make sure that it doesn't surpass, let's say, a 3 out of 10. And when I enter the set, the pain should fade away like it is right now. And especially tomorrow when I wake up, I shouldn't feel it anymore. In fact, I should feel kind of better. So that's what I'm aiming for with these pull-ups. And if all goes well, I will be doing 3 sets of 20 today. If not, I will not. Alright, so when you're weak in the planche, when you're having a weak day, you don't have to force yourself to go as intensely as possible. Instead, what you can do is you can try and focus on getting the correct feeling, because guess what? You're tired. Use this opportunity to try and figure out how a good planche should feel when you're tired, because if I can get a good planche today while feeling tired, a clean planche, it's also gonna help me to get a clean planche in my big sets on good days, on strong days, towards the end, right? Because what oftentimes happens is when you're doing a big set of planche towards the end, you will start breaking down in your form. But if you can reinforce that form on the more tired days, you will know how it feels to hold a correct planche when you're tired at the end of those big sets on the good days. So very important training. Weak as hell, but less pain than set number one. In fact, no pain. No pain, no gain, they say, but I'm not sad about it. Okie dokie, so I tried to explain the workout while I was doing it, but that was just pure chaos. So talking from afterwards, and basically the target is 50 sets of 20 dips, so 1000 dips in total. And well, you can see how it plays out. But I got this question a couple times on how to build endurance, and well, I just want to give a few pointers here, because oftentimes in the comments the guy will or girl will explain basically his or her workout, and oftentimes you see that they are doing all the sets to the max. So for example, I got this example of a guy doing 10 sets of push-ups to the max, and that was his endurance workout. And well, of course, you're gonna get stronger, you're gonna be able to do more push-ups eventually, but I feel like, you can make your workout more efficient and basically get more bang for your buck if you don't focus on making your workout hard from the start, but rather on when you focus on making your workout hard towards the end. So, for example, when I do 50 sets of dips, at the first half of the workout, it's not that much of a challenge. Yes, it's uncomfortable. Yes, my heart rate is going up quite a lot because this is EMOM, right? So it's hard from the start, but the real challenge starts in the second half of the workout, and especially towards the final 20% of that workout. That's when it becomes really challenging. And, of course, going to your max is not a bad thing. In fact, I think it's very good, right? As long as you rest enough. But I think by bringing that, I guess, high intensity to the end of your workout, you're basically allowing yourself to do more volume, and more volume brings more endurance. So when you're doing your, let's say, the 10 sets of push-ups, right? If you're going to the max from the start, basically, perhaps the first set you'll do 50, and then 30, and then 20 or 25, and then 20. And let's say you end up with like 300 push-ups in total. That's great, but you can also spread out the intensity a bit more, perhaps do a bit more shorter sets, right? And by spreading out the intensity, perhaps you'll be able to do 500 push-ups in total, right? And still, you're getting a hard stimulus towards the end, but it's less than what you would do when you just go bang, like balls to the wall from the start. Because, well, if you do 10 sets to the max, that's an insanely high stimulus. You're gonna need a lot of time to recover, oftentimes more than you expect. And basically, I think that's why you will sometimes see a lack of progress, because you don't like people don't often realize how much they just need to rest. They will underestimate how long they need to rest when you're doing 10 sets to the max. But when you're spreading out the intensity and basically aiming to make your workout hard towards the end, the amount of really intense sets is very limited. So although you're getting a lot of volume, right, like the real stuff where you have to recover from for a long time, that's quite minimal, but it's still enough, right? So you're still gonna get stronger. But yeah, I think this is basically a very, or at least to my knowledge, it's what's been working the best for me is to just focus on, the workout becoming hard towards the end. And in the beginning, it can be very challenging to find, the amount of reps and sets and rest time you need in order to do that, right? In order to, find a right intensity for you. But what I would say is when you're not used to it yet, like, for example, you're doing 20 sets of EMOM, right? Start with something that you know you can finish, right? For example, 10 reps of dips every minute. And when you notice, like, oh, towards the end or towards halfway, like on set number 10, it's still easy, then you can start like doing ascending sets. So perhaps you add 1 rep every set from that point, or you start doing less rest time, or something like that. You just make it harder in some way. You increase the time under tension, or you just decrease the rest time, or you do a more difficult exercise. You add some weight, I don't know. But in the second half, you can make your exercises gradually more harder towards the end. And I feel like, from doing so, you will get kind of a gauge how, like, where you have to start when it comes to reps and sets the next time. So for example, you do 11, 12, 13, 14. Towards the end, you're doing 20 dips now instead of 10. Then like, hey, perhaps next time I can start with 12, 14, or 15 dips, something like that. And well, basically, the more you do this, the more you will be able to gauge or be able to gauge which amount of sets and which amount of reps, which amount of rest you need. But yeah, that's how I would approach the endurance way. Alright, so that's gonna be it for today's workout. First, let's do a quick pump check. Whew. Alright, my chest is pumped as hell. And last time I did the dips, I was feeling it a lot in my shoulders and my triceps as well. But this time, especially my shoulders, they're not feeling that tired. And I don't mind my triceps being tired, but hey, they're fine as well. So it was mainly my chest. Very nice. And I think I gauged this workout perfectly because throughout the entire time it was very taxing, but especially after set number 45 or something, I was really like, I was cruising, and at one point I was tired, and I was so afraid that I would fail like somewhere in between the last 5 sets, but I managed to pull through. I was watching Hit versus Goku during the EMOM, and I think it helped me to push through to the final bits. But very happy how this workout went. And you oftentimes hear people saying like, oh, dips are for your lower chest, but when I feel my chest right now, it's just one big vessel pumped full of blood. There's no difference in between my lower chest and my upper chest. So I don't really know how that works, but perhaps someone with more knowledge can tell me about it. But as far as I can feel in my chest, the dips will work your upper chest too, because I can feel the striations on top of my chest just being pumped as hell too. But yeah, that's gonna be it for today's workout. I'm gonna head downstairs and have some dinner, and well, I'll see you tomorrow for a long run and a leg day, so that's gonna be exciting.